I smoothed my wedding dress for the 100th time, unable to stop smiling as I gazed at my reflection. After years of disappointment, I'd finally found the one. Carter was everything I'd ever dreamed of, handsome, successful, and utterly devoted to me. In just a few hours, we'd be husband and wife. A knock at the door startled me from my reverie. "Come in," I called. My best friend Leanne poked her head in, her eyes wide. "Addison, you look stunning," she breathed. Then her expression shifted, growing serious. "Can we talk for a second?" My stomach clenched. "What's wrong?" Leanne hesitated, then blurted, "It's about Carter. I overheard something." Before she could continue, my father burst into the room. "There's my beautiful girl," he exclaimed, enveloping me in a bear hug. "Are you ready to knock 'em dead?" I used to smile, pushing aside the unease Leanne's words had stirred. "Ready as I'll ever be, Dad." The ceremony passed in a blur of flowers, music, and Carter's adoring gaze. As we shared our first dance as husband and wife, I felt like I was floating on air. Nothing could spoil this perfect day. Hours later, flushed and giddy from champagne, I scanned the reception for Carter. He'd mentioned needing to catch up with an old friend, but that had been ages ago. I spotted Leanne by the bar and made my way over. "Have you seen Carter?" I asked. Leanne's smile faltered. "Not for a while. Addison, about what I was trying to tell you earlier." "There you are." My new mother-in-law's shrill voice cut through the crowd. Eleanor appeared at my elbow, her perfectly coiffed hair not budging as she air-kissed my cheek. "Darling, you simply must come meet the Andersons. They're dying to congratulate you." I shot an apologetic look at Leanne as Eleanor steered me away. For the next hour, I was paraded around like a prized show pony, shaking hands and making small talk. All the while, a nagging worry gnawed at me. Where was Carter? Finally extricating myself from Eleanor's clutches, I retreated to a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. No messages from Carter. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Everything okay, Pumpkin?" My father's concerned voice made me jump. I plastered on a smile. "Of course, Dad. Just trying to track down my wayward husband." Dad's brow furrowed. "That's odd. I could have sworn I saw him leaving with that redhead. What's her name? His ex-girlfriend?" The bottom dropped out of my stomach. "Vanessa?" Dad nodded slowly. "That's the one. But I'm sure there's a perfectly innocent explanation." I barely heard him, my mind racing. Vanessa, Carter's old friend. The ex he'd sworn was ancient history. "Addison?" Leanne appeared at my side, her face etched with worry. "You won't believe what I found out. On the night of your wedding—" I held up a hand, silencing her. "Let me guess, it's about Carter and Vanessa?" Leanne's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess," I said bitterly. "Excuse me." I pushed past them both, ignoring their calls as I fled the reception hall. Outside, the cool night air did nothing to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Hurt, betrayal, and fury warred for dominance as I paced the empty parking lot. My phone buzzed. A text from Carter. "Sorry, got caught up. Be back soon." "Love you." I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. How could he do this? On our wedding day of all days. A car pulled into the lot, headlights sweeping across me. I squinted, recognizing Carter's sleek sports car. As it drew closer, I saw two figures inside, Carter behind the wheel and a familiar redhead in the passenger seat. My hands clenched into fists. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it was quickly becoming my worst nightmare. I stood frozen as Carter's car pulled into the parking lot. My wedding dress suddenly felt like a straitjacket, constricting my breathing. As Carter stepped out, his eyes widened in surprise. "Addison, what are you doing out here?" I ignored him, my gaze locked on Vanessa as she emerged from the passenger side. "Having fun catching up with your old friend?" I spat. Carter's face paled. "It's not what it looks like, I swear." "Really? Because it looks like you abandoned your wife on our wedding day to run off with your ex-girlfriend." Vanessa at least had the decency to look ashamed. "I'm so sorry, Addison. I didn't realize." "Save it," I snapped. Turning to Carter, I hissed, "How could you do this to me?" He reached for me, but I recoiled. "Baby, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you lied to me? How you made a mockery of our vows?" Carter's expression hardened. "You're overreacting. Nothing happened." "Nothing happened," I laughed bitterly. "You disappeared for hours on our wedding night." "I told you, we were just talking." "In your car? For hours?" I shook my head in disbelief. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Carter's eyes flashed with anger. Maybe if you weren't so damn insecure, I wouldn't need to seek companionship elsewhere. His words hit me like a slap. Before I could respond, Leanne appeared at my side. "Everything okay out here?" she asked, eyeing Carter suspiciously. "It's fine," Carter snapped. "This is between me and my wife." Leanne bristled. "Your wife who you abandoned at her own reception?" Carter rounded on her. "Stay out of this. You've always tried to come between us." "Don't you dare blame Leanne," I snarled. "She's been more loyal to me tonight than you have." Our raised voices had drawn attention. My father emerged from the reception hall, his face thunderous. "What the hell is going on here?" Carter's demeanor instantly changed. "Bruce, just a little misunderstanding. Everything's fine." Dad's eyes narrowed. "Doesn't look fine to me." He turned to me. "Addison, sweetheart, what happened?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I explain this humiliation? Carter jumped in. "It's nothing, really. Addison's just upset because I stepped out for a bit. But I'm back now and we can get back to celebrating." Dad's gaze shifted to Vanessa, who was trying to slink away unnoticed. "And who might you be?" Before she could answer, Eleanor's shrill voice cut through the night air. "There you all are. What on earth are you doing out here?" She bustled over, taking in the scene with narrowed eyes. "Carter, darling, your guests are wondering where you've gone. And Addison, really sulking in the parking lot? How unbecoming." I felt my cheeks burn with anger and shame. "I'm not sulking," I managed. "I'm trying to understand why my husband abandoned me on our wedding night." Eleanor waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be so dramatic, dear. I'm sure Carter had a perfectly good reason." "Oh, he had a reason, all right," I muttered, glaring at Vanessa. Eleanor followed my gaze, her eyes widening slightly before her mask of civility slipped back into place. "Well, whatever's happened, I'm sure we can sort it out privately. No need to air our dirty laundry in public." "Dirty laundry?" Dad growled. "If that boy has hurt my daughter." "Now, Bruce," Eleanor cut in smoothly, "let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure this is all just a big misunderstanding." I looked from Eleanor's forced smile to Carter's pleading eyes to my father's concerned face. The weight of expectations and appearances pressed down on me, threatening to suffocate me. In that moment, I made a decision. "You know what? You're right, Eleanor. This isn't the time or place." I straightened my spine and fixed Carter with an icy stare. "But don't think for a second this is over." With that, I turned on my heel and strode back towards the reception, leaving a stunned silence in my wake. As I pushed through the doors, Leanne hurrying after me, I realized with crystal clarity that my picture-perfect marriage was nothing but a beautiful lie. The weeks following our disastrous wedding night were a blur of tense silences and half-hearted apologies. Carter swore up and down that nothing had happened with Vanessa, but the seed of doubt had been firmly planted in my mind. One particularly gloomy afternoon, I found myself alone in our apartment, restlessly pacing. On impulse, I grabbed Carter's laptop. He'd always been protective of it, and a nagging voice in my head whispered that there might be a reason why. My hands shook as I opened it, surprised to find it unlocked. As I scrolled through his emails, my heart sank. There, in black and white, was proof of Carter's betrayal, not just with Vanessa, but with multiple women. The emails dated back months, even before our engagement. I was still staring at the screen, numb with shock, when the door opened. Carter walked in, his easy smile faltering as he took in my expression and the open laptop. "Addison, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight. I looked up at him, tears streaming down my face. "How could you?" Carter's face hardened. "You had no right to go through my personal emails." "Personal emails?" I scoffed. "You mean your collection of love letters to half the women in the city?" He strode over, slamming the laptop shut. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like you've been cheating on me since before we even got engaged." Carter ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You don't understand. My job, sometimes I need to entertain clients. It doesn't mean anything." I stared at him in disbelief. "Entertain clients? Is that what you call sleeping with other women?" "Don't be so dramatic," he snapped. "This is why I didn't tell you. I knew you'd overreact." His dismissive tone ignited a fury in me. "Overreact? You've been lying to me our entire relationship." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "Dinner at our house tonight, 7 p.m. sharp. We need to discuss your behavior at the wedding." I laughed bitterly. Your mother wants to discuss my behavior. Isn't that rich? Carter's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I showed him the text. Apparently, I'm the one causing problems in this family. He sighed. Look, let's just go to dinner and smooth things over. We can discuss this later. Part of me wanted to refuse, to scream and rage and throw his lies back in his face. But another part, the part that still clung to the hope of salvaging something from this wreckage, nodded in agreement. Hours later, we sat around Eleanor's immaculately set dining table. The tension was palpable as we picked at our food in silence. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Addison, dear, I think we need to address your little outburst at the wedding. I gripped my fork tightly. My outburst? She nodded, her smile not reaching her eyes. It was quite unseemly, causing a scene like that. In front of all our guests, no less. I glanced at Carter, but he studiously avoided my gaze. I'm sorry if my reaction to finding my husband with another woman on our wedding night was inconvenient for you, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Eleanor's smile tightened. Now, I'm sure it was all just a misunderstanding. Carter has explained everything. Has he? I turned to Carter. Did you explain about all the other women too, or just Vanessa? The color drained from Carter's face. Eleanor's eyes darted between us. What other women? She asked sharply. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. Would you like to see the emails, Eleanor? I'd be happy to share. Carter lunged for my phone. Addison, don't. But it was too late. I'd already pulled up the damning messages, sliding the phone across the table to Eleanor. As she read, her carefully composed mask cracked, revealing a mix of shock and fury. She looked up at Carter, her voice ice-cold. Explain, now. As Carter stammered out excuses, I stood up, suddenly feeling suffocated. I think I've lost my appetite, I said, heading for the door. Behind me, I heard Eleanor's voice rising in anger, Carter's pleading responses. But I didn't look back. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of something like hope. The truth was out, and there was no going back now. I paced my living room, my mind racing with possibilities. The truth about Carter's infidelity was out, but I knew that wasn't enough. He'd manipulated me for too long, and Eleanor would undoubtedly try to sweep everything under the rug to preserve their precious family image. No, I needed to do more. I needed to take control. My phone buzzed, a text from Leanne. How are you holding up? Want me to come over? I hesitated, then typed back, Actually, can you meet me at Café Noir in an hour? I have an idea. An hour later, I sat across from Leanne, my hands wrapped around a steaming latte. I'm going to expose Carter, I said without preamble. Publicly. Leanne's eyes widened. Addison, are you sure? That's a big step. I nodded firmly. I'm done being the victim in this story. It's time to write my own ending. We spent the next 2 hours plotting. Lean, bless her, threw herself into the plan with gusto. By the time we left the cafe, we had a strategy that made my heart race with equal parts excitement and terror. The next day, I called my father. Dad, I need your help, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Anything. Pumpkin, what's going on? I took a deep breath. I'm going to confront Carter and Eleanor, publicly, at the charity gala next week. There was a long pause. Addison, are you sure that's wise? It's necessary, Dad. I can't let them keep controlling the narrative. Will you help me? Another pause, then a sigh. Of course I will. What do you need? We talked for an hour, refining the plan. By the end, I felt a surge of gratitude for my father's unwavering support. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of preparations. Leanne and I worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and coordinating with trusted allies. My father used his connections to ensure key people would be present. The night of the gala arrived. I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing down my crimson dress. My hands shook slightly as I fastened my necklace. This was it. No turning back now. Carter was waiting by the door, looking handsome in his tuxedo. For a moment, my resolve wavered. How had we come to this? Ready to go, darling? He asked, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. The ballroom was a glittering sea of wealth and influence. Eleanor held court near the center, her laugh tinkling artificially as she greeted guests. I felt her eyes on me as Carter and I made our rounds, but I studiously avoided her gaze. An hour into the event, I caught Leanne's eye across the room. She gave me a subtle nod. It was time. I made my way to the small stage where the band was playing. With a deep breath, I stepped up to the microphone. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice ringing out clear and strong. I hope you're all enjoying the gala. I have a special announcement to make. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. I saw Carter's confused expression, Eleanor's narrowing eyes. Many of you know me as Carter Williams's wife, I continued. What you may not know is that our marriage has been built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Carter started towards the stage, but my father smoothly intercepted him. I've recently discovered evidence of my husband's multiple affairs, dating back to before our wedding, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I believe in honesty and transparency, which is why I'm sharing this with you all tonight. Eleanor pushed through the crowd, her face a mask of fury. Addison, stop this nonsense at once, she hissed. I ignored her, pressing on. I refuse to be silenced or shamed for someone else's actions. And I refuse to let this family's obsession with appearances overshadow the truth. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Suddenly, the large screen behind me lit up, displaying a montage of Carter's incriminating emails and text messages. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I saw Carter's face pale, Eleanor's eyes widen in horror. In that moment, standing before the truth laid bare, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Whatever happened next, I knew I had taken back control of my story. And I was just getting started. The room erupted into chaos as the evidence of Carter's infidelity flashed across the screen. I stood firm on the stage, my heart pounding but my resolve unshakable. Carter's face had turned ashen, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. Eleanor, however, was a force of nature. She stormed towards the stage, her carefully cultivated mask of civility crumbling. "How dare you?" she hissed, grabbing my arm. "You ungrateful little—" "Let go of me," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my limbs. "You don't get to control this narrative anymore, Eleanor." She released me as if burned, turning to address the murmuring crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, this is clearly a misunderstanding. My daughter-in-law is unwell. We'll sort this out privately." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Unwell? Is that what you call it when someone refuses to be manipulated and lied to?" Carter finally found his voice. "Addison, please, let's talk about this at home." "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied, my gaze sweeping the room. "I wanted you all to know the truth. About Carter, about this family, about the lies we've all been living with." Suddenly, a new voice cut through the tension. "I can vouch for what Addison is saying." I turned, shocked to see Vanessa pushing her way through the crowd. Carter's face, if possible, grew even paler. "I was part of Carter's deception," Vanessa continued, her voice shaking. "But I can't keep silent anymore. Everything Addison is saying is true." The room exploded into fresh chaos. I saw my father move to stand protectively near me, while Leanne hurried to my side. But my focus was on Carter and Eleanor, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. Eleanor's eyes blazed with fury. "You little tramp," she spat at Vanessa. "How much did they pay you to say that?" Vanessa flinched but stood her ground. "Nothing. I'm here because it's the right thing to do." Carter finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. He strode towards me, his face a mask of desperation. "Addison, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. Just don't do this." For a moment, I wavered. The look in his eyes, so familiar and once so dear to me, tugged at my heart. But then I remembered all the lies, all the betrayals. "It's too late, Carter," I said softly. "You had your chances. This is me taking control of my life back." Eleanor, seeing she was losing ground, changed tactics. Her voice took on a sickeningly sweet tone. "Addison, darling, think about what you're doing. This scandal could ruin us all. Is that what you want? To destroy this family?" I felt a surge of anger. "Family? You call this a family? A web of lies and manipulation, more concerned with appearances than actual love or support?" I turned to address the crowd again. "I'm done being silent. I'm done playing the perfect wife in this farce of a marriage, and I'm done letting fear control my actions." With shaking hands, I removed my wedding ring. The diamond glittered under the harsh lights as I held it up. This ring symbolized promises that were broken long ago. I'm returning it, along with all the lies and pain it represents. I placed the ring on the podium, the soft clink seeming to echo in the stunned silence of the room. "Addison," Carter pleaded one last time, "don't do this. I love you. I met his gaze steadily. No, Carter, you love the idea of me, the perfect wife who would never question you, never challenge you, but that's not who I am anymore. With that, I stepped down from the stage, my head held high. As I walked through the parting crowd, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with legal battles and emotional turmoil, I was sure, but for the first time in months, I felt truly free. I had made my choice, and there was no going back. The days following the gala passed in a blur of legal meetings and emotional upheaval. I threw myself into my work at the boutique, grateful for the distraction. But even as I helped customers find the perfect outfit, my mind raced with thoughts of divorce papers and asset division. One particularly exhausting afternoon, I returned home to find Carter waiting on my doorstep. My heart clenched at the sight of him, a mix of anger and residual affection warring within me. "Addison," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded curtly. 5 minutes. Inside, Carter paced the living room while I stood with my arms crossed, a physical barrier between us. "I've been in therapy," he blurted out. "I'm trying to change, to understand why I did what I did. I know I hurt you, but I love you. Can't we try to work this out?" For a moment, I wavered. The man before me looked so different from the confident, manipulative Carter I'd come to know. But then I remembered all the lies, all the pain. "It's too late, Carter," I said softly. "I can't trust you anymore." His face crumpled. "What about everything we built together? Our dreams, our future?" "Those dreams died the moment you chose to betray me," I replied, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. Carter's demeanor suddenly shifted, his eyes hardening. "You'll regret this, Addison. You think you can just walk away? I'll make sure you have nothing when this is over." A chill ran down my spine at his threat, but I stood my ground. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. After he left, I called Leanne in tears. She arrived within minutes, armed with ice cream and a fierce determination to protect me. "We need to be prepared," she said as we sat on my couch. "Carter's not going to make this easy." The next morning, I woke to a flurry of notifications on my phone. My heart sank as I scrolled through messages from friends and coworkers, all asking if I was okay. With trembling fingers, I opened my social media accounts. There, splashed across my feed, were private photos and messages taken out of context, painting me as unstable and vindictive. Carter had launched a smear campaign. I felt the walls closing in, my carefully rebuilt world threatening to crumble once more. But then I remembered the strength I'd found within myself. I wouldn't let Carter destroy me again. I called my father and Leanne, explaining the situation through tears of fury. Within hours, we had assembled a team of lawyers and PR specialists to counter Carter's attacks. Days blurred together as we fought back. For every lie Carter spread, we responded with truth. It was exhausting, but I refused to back down. The turning point came unexpectedly. I was at the boutique, trying to lose myself in work, when Vanessa walked in. "I'm so sorry," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I can't stand by and watch Carter destroy you like this. I have proof, emails, texts, everything, showing he's behind the smear campaign. I'll testify if you need me to." I stared at her, shocked by this unexpected ally. "Why are you doing this?" Vanessa smiled sadly. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I was once in your shoes. I wish someone had stood up for me then." Armed with Vanessa's evidence, we took the offensive. Carter's carefully constructed lies began to unravel, and public opinion swiftly turned in my favor. But just as victory seemed within reach, I received a call that made my blood run cold. It was my lawyer, his voice grave. "Addison, Carter's filed for full control of your assets. He's claiming you're mentally unstable and unfit to manage your finances. There's an emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow." I felt the room spin around me. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was suddenly at risk. Carter was making his final desperate play to regain control. As I hung up the phone, I realized this was it, the moment that would define everything. I could crumble under the pressure, or I could stand tall and fight with everything I had. Taking a deep breath, I made my choice. Carter had underestimated me for the last time. Tomorrow, I would show him and the world exactly what I was made of. The final battle was here, and I was ready. The morning of the emergency hearing arrived with a sense of foreboding. I stood before the mirror, smoothing down my most professional suit, trying to project an image of stability and competence. My hands shook slightly as I fastened my necklace, a gift from my father, a reminder of his unwavering support. Leanne arrived to drive me to the courthouse, her presence a comforting anchor. "You've got this, Addison," she said, squeezing my hand. "We're all behind you." The courthouse loomed before us, its stone facade imposing and cold. As we climbed the steps, I spotted Carter and Eleanor arriving, both impeccably dressed and wearing matching expressions of smug confidence. My stomach churned, but I lifted my chin and strode past them without a glance. Inside the courtroom, my lawyer Sarah greeted us with a tight smile. "Remember," she whispered, "stay calm, no matter what. We have the truth on our side." As the judge entered and the proceedings began, I felt as though I was watching from outside my body. Carter's lawyer painted a picture of me as unstable, vindictive, and incapable of managing my own affairs. With each word, I felt my carefully reconstructed world threatening to crumble. When it was our turn, Sarah presented the evidence of Carter's infidelity and manipulation. I took the stand, my voice surprisingly steady as I recounted the betrayals and lies. But as I spoke, I saw the judge's expression remain impassive, and a seed of doubt took root in my heart. During a recess, I overheard Eleanor speaking to Carter in hushed, urgent tones. "We need to end this now," she hissed. "Use the nuclear option." My blood ran cold. What else could they possibly have up their sleeves? As we reconvened, Carter's lawyer called a surprise witness, Dr. Evelyn Matthews, a respected psychiatrist. My heart sank as I recognized her. I'd seen her briefly for anxiety after discovering Carter's infidelity. Dr. Matthews took the stand, her face a mask of professional concern. "In my professional opinion," she stated, "Addison exhibits signs of borderline personality disorder, exacerbated by recent stress. Her erratic behavior and accusations stem from this condition, making her unsuitable to manage her own affairs at this time." The courtroom spun around me. How could she say this? We'd only had 2 sessions, and I'd never been diagnosed with any such condition. I turned to Sarah in panic, but her face was grim. As Dr. Matthews continued her damning testimony, I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd fought for, every step forward I'd taken, seemed to be slipping away. Carter and Eleanor wore twin expressions of triumph, and I realized with sickening clarity that they'd planned this all along. In that moment, staring at the faces of those who sought to destroy me, something inside me snapped. A calm, cold fury washed over me, clearing away the panic and doubt. I leaned over to Sarah, whispering urgently. Her eyes widened, then narrowed in determination. She nodded, then stood to address the judge. "Your Honor, we request a brief recess to confer with our client." The judge agreed, and I was ushered into a small conference room. Sarah, Leanne, and my father crowded around me, their faces etched with concern. "Addison, what are you thinking?" Sarah asked. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. "We need to turn the tables one last time," I said. "I have an idea, but it's risky. If it works, we expose Carter and Eleanor for who they really are. If it fails..." I trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever you decide, we're with you," he said firmly. Leanne nodded in agreement, all the way. I looked at each of them, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. This was it, the final battle. Everything I'd been through, every lie uncovered and truth revealed, had led to this moment. "Okay," I said, my voice steady and resolved. "Here's what we're going to do." As we prepared to re-enter the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of calm. Win or lose, I would face this challenge on my own terms. Carter and Eleanor had underestimated me for the last time. The judge called the court back to order, and I straightened my spine, ready to fight for my future, my dignity, and my truth. As I stood in the courtroom, facing down Carter, Eleanor, and Dr. Matthews, a strange calm washed over me. I nodded to Sarah, who approached the bench. "Your Honor, we'd like to call a surprise witness of our own," she announced. Carter's lawyer jumped to his feet, objecting, but the judge, intrigued, allowed it. My heart pounded as the courtroom doors opened. Dr. Evelyn Matthews' identical twin sister, Dr. Caroline Matthews, walked in. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. I watched as the color drained from Carter and Eleanor's faces. Caroline took the stand, her voice steady. "I'm here to expose a grave injustice. My sister, Evelyn, was coerced into providing false testimony about Addison's mental state. I have proof of the bribery and threats made by Carter Williams and his mother, Eleanor. She produced a series of emails and recorded conversations that laid bare Carter and Eleanor's desperation and manipulation. The judge's expression hardened as he reviewed the evidence. Carter leapt to his feet, shouting denials, but his protests rang hollow in the face of such damning proof. Eleanor sat frozen, her carefully crafted facade crumbling before my eyes. As the truth unfolded, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The judge called for order, his voice cutting through the chaos. In light of this new evidence, I'm dismissing the petition for control of Mrs. Williams' assets. Furthermore, I'm recommending a full investigation into Mr. Williams and Mrs. Eleanor Williams for perjury and witness tampering. Relief flooded through me, but it was tempered by a bittersweet realization. This victory marked the end of a chapter in my life, a painful, transformative journey that had changed me forever. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my supporters, I faced a sea of reporters. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. Today, justice was served, I began, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. But this isn't just about me. It's about standing up to manipulation and abuse, about reclaiming your power and your truth. As I spoke, I saw faces in the crowd, women nodding, some with tears in their eyes. I realized that my story resonated beyond just me. To anyone out there who's been made to doubt themselves, who's been gaslit or manipulated, your truth matters, your voice matters, and you are stronger than you know. In the days that followed, my life transformed. The boutique where I worked offered me a partnership, recognizing my resilience and business acumen. Leanne and I started a support group for women recovering from toxic relationships, turning our pain into purpose. One crisp autumn morning, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked. A gentle knock at the door revealed my father, holding a small gift-wrapped package. "I'm so proud of you, Pumpkin," he said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "Your mother would be too." I unwrapped the gift with trembling hands to find a delicate silver locket. Inside was a photo of my mother, her smile radiant and strong. "She always said you had her spirit," Dad said softly. "Now the whole world knows it too." Tears pricked my eyes as I fastened the locket around my neck. It felt like a talisman, a reminder of the strength that had always been within me. Later that evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the moments of despair, they were all part of my story now. But they didn't define me. What defined me was how I'd risen above it all, how I'd found my voice, my strength, my truth. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities I'd never dared to imagine before. I was Addison Williams, survivor, fighter, and now, finally, the author of my own story. And this was just the beginning.